Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are in the world. I am honored to have Cathy O'Brien back on the show. Some of you may have seen we had a discussion a few years ago, but it got banned. It got banned off all the platforms, all the mainstream platforms anyway. There's still a copy of it up on BitChute. But now that YouTube seems to have relaxed a bit, we're able to say a bit more since Trump came in. Cathy is back, folks, and we're going to go over Cathy's story in great detail. Many of you, I'm sure, have never heard Cathy's story. I imagine a lot of you have. I know some of you are familiar with MK Ultra. You know, we'll start out going over the basics, explaining what that means. And then we'll get into Cathy's story. And we got to salute Cathy's bravery. She's been through absolute hell, absolute generational trauma, horrors in her own family. So viewer discretion is advised. And Cathy, we've even had the police come down on my channel. I've been in all kinds of legal trouble because I interview survivors, would you believe it? And now the police have got a requirement on me, otherwise I go to prison. I have to ask you, do you waive your anonymity and do you give us permission to publish your story?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that. So all of Cathy's links are in the description box, folks. Please support her important work. The website, transformation.com. I put 2 links up for the books if you're in the UK and if you're in the USA, separate links. You can also follow Cathy on X and on Instagram. And a month ago, we did interview Anna Lee, who was also a victim of mind control and tunnels and stuff. And you can watch that one at the links down there as well. All right, Cathy, before we go back then over your story, could you just explain to the viewers who are not familiar with MK Ultra what that actually means, please, the history of it?
Yes, I'm a survivor of CIA MK Ultra mind control, and I was used deep in the Washington, D.C. swamp, and I was among the perpetrators who steal elections, who use drug and the sale of humans, especially children, across open borders to fund their globalist agenda, and who are using mind control to usher in what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, Joe Biden, and so many others have termed the New World Order. So mind control is their tool for being able to make us compliant and go along with this globalist agenda. And this information was imported into the United States with Project Paperclip. When we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US, with them came the formula for MK Ultra mind control. That formula is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a church, a classroom, a military, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. And it also includes sleep, food, and water deprivation, which makes it easy to understand why our food is being manipulated and genetically altered and bioengineered, why our water is so contaminated, because all of these starve our brain of nutrients. Mind control needs to shut neuron pathways in the brain down. We need them open so that we can have our free thought and our vibrancy. So we need good nutrition, plenty of rest, plenty of water, and knowledge that is our defense against mind control.
Well said. So if we go back over the history of it then, are you saying that it came from the Nazis? They were doing experiments and then we incorporated a lot of the scientists and professionals into the Western intelligence agencies?
Absolutely. And right after we imported them in with their secrets, the National Security Act was born in the US in 1947, along with the CIA. The CIA was complicit in bringing about this globalist agenda and asserting the techniques for MK Ultra mind control, and for also manipulating generations, slowly creeping in, so that after so many generations of being led outside ourselves to look to big government, big pharma, big tech, big cult to cult religion, and even these self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders who meet in secret. We've been conditioned so long to look outside ourselves that we forgot we have all the power. They only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. And we need to go within and remember who we are and why we're here. So it's an easy victory for all of us. But the secrecy, the censorship of pertinent facts has allowed for the proliferation of this secret agenda for generations now.
And one of the most heinous methods they employed, I believe, was the child SA and the R wording of kids to create this trauma at a very young age. And didn't they try and justify that? They said it was in the interest of national security so that they could use that and apply it to their various projects.
Absolutely. And so when we understand that the sexualization of children is a very deliberate mind control agenda, we start to understand why it's being pushed so hard. We also need to understand that this has been going on for generations. It had been found in the Hitler-Himmler research that after 3 generations, any knowledge base, any belief system, any trauma base becomes autogenic in the brain. It's passed down generationally. And that is something that they were working towards conditioning people with from the onset. We had the subliminals to allow for the sexualization of children all the way back in the very first Disney cartoons. You ask yourself, what does Disney have to do with MK Ultra mind control? What does Disney have to do with rocket scientists like Werner von Braun of NASA? Research for yourself. Everybody can. It's right there in the information on Project Paperclip and Disney's association there. And it is all because of mind control and conditioning the population subliminally for generations to start accepting this attitude of child rape and the sexualization of children, which actually creates a heightened suggestibility, a compliant attitude, and it's exactly what they want for their slave society agenda. So when we understand that, we're going to be equipped to start protecting our children instead of allowing for any further of this nonsense sexualization to go on. If it weren't so important to them, it would not be the most lucrative business in the world.
Well, thank you for setting the table so eloquently, Cathy. Let's go to your family now, and perhaps we should give a bit of history of your family before we just, get to what happened to you.
Yeah, my father had been sexualized and raped as a child. He was also ritually abused. My mother was also sexually assaulted and raped as a child, and she was prostituted to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. These Masonic lodges, these secret societies, are where secrets on mind control are kept. Again, knowledge is our defense, but they've been operating on this secret knowledge equals power attitude for a long time. So that's why these secret societies place people in key positions in communities and politics and judges, in positions of influence. It's very deliberately done in order to perpetuate their ultimate agenda of control. So by the time I was born into this multi-generational sexual rape family, my father's rape of me began in infancy, before I could even think to know what he was doing was wrong. But my brain knew it was wrong, because that's how our brains respond to trauma. This information on our mind-brain function has been buried under national security ever since the the beginning of the National Security Act. They were suppressing the information on our defense against mind control, and that is knowledge, pertinent knowledge on our own mind-brain function. Well, my brain was shutting down neuron pathways around the trauma, repressing it deep into the subconscious so the rest of the mind could develop and function normally. This is called the mind's sane defense to trauma too horrible to comprehend. There was no comprehension of that abuse. And even though I didn't know it was wrong, I was just an infant, my brain knew that I was enduring pain and suffocation. And so it shut down those neuron pathways. My father's rape extended into child pornography. More neuron pathways shut down. It extended into prostituting me to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. More neuron pathways shut down. As all these neuron pathways are shutting down, I was losing conscious awareness, critical analysis, free thought. If we don't have our conscious mind focus filter over our subconscious, the subconscious mind just takes information in, and then that drives our thoughts and ultimately our actions. That's what mind control is about, because without free thought, there's no free will. If we don't have free will, we don't have our soul expression. Without soul expression, we don't have compassion for each other. We don't have discernment of truth. We don't have the capacity to stand against this assault on our humanity that's been going on my whole life. It stops us from gathering that strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love in so many ways. This is then a spiritual battle, but it's one that we win as soon as we remember who we are and why we're here. Well, as a little infant, I didn't have any defenses at all. And when my father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails, he was approached by a local politician that had been raping me ever since I was a little bitty toddler from my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge.
Cathy, can I just say one thing real quick, just so YouTube doesn't shut us down? For that thing that your father's creating, can we just call it CP? Child per CP. If we can just call it CP.
Okay, I'm not sure what word we're supposed to.
The videos, the child videos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just if we could just call it child videos or CP. Okay. Yeah, CP.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. So when this local politician was Gerald Ford, who went on to become the unelected president of the United States, as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization and MK Ultra mind control. So then from that point on, I was taken to various DARPA, NASA, and military installations for sophisticated strategic programming. And my father's immunity from prosecution was rewarded with lucrative military contracts. I think that we should consider that this erosion of justice has been going on my whole life, and it has allowed for the rape of children to go on for the purposes of creating this compliant society. So we got a long way to go to unravel this mess, but at least now people are awake and aware. They're opening their eyes to embrace the reality of it and to realize that we can't wait on big government to fix our problems for us. It's up to each and every one of us. We all need to wake up, expand our thinking, remember who we are and why we're here, and start taking positive action right where we are. It's up to us.
All right, let me just give a little summary then. So Cathy's been giving the background of the generational trauma in her family. And what she said was that the father was making these CP videos, and he ends up, they get busted doing that. And they offer him the opportunity to put Cathy into a mind control program so that he can get off on these charges of having these nasty videos. And that is how Cathy enters the mind control program. But I'm just to go over this even a bit more slowly and get a bit more history, Cathy. I'm curious, Do you know how your parents met?
I have no idea. I think it was arranged from everything that I understood. So, um,
And
the,
what were their jobs at the time this was ongoing?
my father was earning his living as a worm digger, and my mother was um, a mother yeah, at home. So that was we were extremely poor until my father sold me into the project, and then he became extremely wealthy from there. He also became a part of the blackmail operations that are used with these kind of videos, especially where children are involved. And those were going on my whole life. They were being made at the my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. They were being made at the Epstein Island of its time, Mackinac Island, Michigan, where these global leaders would meet and discuss their plans for um, the erosion of free thought in society to make the compliant society. And later, of course, that was done at Bohemian Grove. But these Epstein Islands, these places that we hear about now, have been going on my whole life, and there have been many of them, and I'm sure there will be again, because as quickly as they're identified, they pop up somewhere else. That's why it's so important that rather than just identifying and blaming one person, we realize that there is a strong, very deliberate agenda behind all of this that will continue until we wake up, gather our strength of spirit, and say no more.
All right, let me just address the viewers real quick then. We're only 15 minutes in. We've got over 1,000 watching live across all platforms. There's a huge amount of interest in this. It's rising rapidly, but more importantly, can you please support Cathy's links? I've just put them in the chat. We've got the website, we've got X, we've got her Instagram, we've got the links to the books. I mean, Cathy has been a pioneer in exposing MK Ultra for decades. I think I may have read about you in a David Icke book at one point when Icke was explaining MK Ultra to me. My head was exploding. I was like, how can this be true? How can this be possible? This is just, how can our own government sanction this? And, you know, I was fighting with it for so long. And more evidence came out. And now it's even declassified. MK Ultra has its own wiki page. And it absolutely is true. And you, David, I know all the people at the forefront of this, we salute you for your bravery at that time, because so many people must have just thinking, these people are absolutely crazy. Anyway, keep putting your questions in the chat, folks. We're going to keep going over Cathy's story, and we're going to get the questions in towards the end, unless they pertain to something she's actually talking about at the time. So we're at the point now where Cathy's a child. Dad got busted with the CP videos. They say to him, we'll let you off with that. Put your child in this MK Ultra mind control program, and we'll take it from there. So what happens next, Cathy, in the program for you as a kid?
Well, like I said, I was used in the blackmail videos, and that
So
was
is that like honey trap stuff?
Yes, yes, and definitely in later years, even more so, where I was also used to deliver messages to and from government leaders, and to various drug lords who were involved in the CIA cocaine operations, and that was um, a lot that is detailed in my 1995 testimony for Congress, Transformation of America. So if people want to find more details on those operations that I was used in and how I was used, it's all detailed right there. And you know, Sean, it's interesting to note that back in those early days in 95, releasing that testimony for Congress, it paralleled David Icke's release of Robots Rebellion. And from the other side of the world, here we were releasing pertinent information that people needed to know. I was doing it motivated by love for my daughter, who was caught up in a very corrupted so-called Child Protective Services system. And speaking out on her behalf, it was love for her that compelled me to speak out. whatever compelled David to speak out, it was definitely, you know, the same love. It was something divine, and it was something that in the magnitude of the need for humanity to embrace this reality of information so that we could reclaim our birthright and our humanity, to protect ourselves against further assault.
So, Cathy, how old were you when you went into MK Ultra?
In so many ways, I was born into it, and I was sold in as a toddler. And then by the age of, 5 or 6, my father had been trained how to raise me in the project, how to manipulate my subconscious mind, how to use, our subconscious mind is easily manipulated by subliminal intrusion and repetitive media narrative. Anything repeated 3 times kind of goes into the subconscious. So he was trained on that by Cardinal Law. Cardinal Law was caught up in the infamous Catholic child abuse scandal and was ultimately just transferred to the Vatican as a result of having been caught in that. But he was training many at the time, like my father, on how to manipulate my mind, but also how to subject me to further trauma through the ritual abuse that was also going on within the Catholic Church and other churches and other places. But that had been found too in the Himmler research to be the most horrific trauma on the human mind, especially prior to age 5, while the brain is still forming. So all of that was increasing the shutting down of neuron pathways in my brain. It was creating more and more compartmentalization of memory and making me more easily led and compliant. So trauma after trauma was being inflicted in order to shut down neuron pathways and make me more compliant. The tortures I endured were extensive. They were physical and psychological, emotional, and from every direction that they could manipulate. And that was, again, on the military, DARPA, and NASA installations that kind of programming occurred, and also in the underworld of Disney World in those early years.
It's interesting you touched on the Vatican, because Saturday night at this time we've been doing a series with Kevin Annett, who has been talking. Yeah,
it's amazing.
We've got him back next week.
Wow,
and
great.
He's very popular on the channel, and he has touched on MK Ultra in his series. Have you collaborated with him at all?
Yes, I have, and it was when he was exposing the Kamloops abuses in Canada, and we merged there for the first time. And he's amazing, and I appreciate what he has done, because he's successfully exposed things from his point of view, from it very effectively. He's made a big difference for humanity and the children.
Perhaps we could get you guys to come on together at some point in the future. I think that would be amazing. All right, so I'm gonna drop in a few viewer questions before we continue. And the next one is, Cathy, what procedures did they do to you, and how does it all come under MK Ultra, please?
I'm not sure what procedures are being referred to there, other than the sleep, food, and water deprivation that I had mentioned, because it was very strategically done. It was done, the sleep deprivation was so effective that I could never sleep for more than 2 hours and never dreamed. So I didn't dream the first 30 years of my life when I was experienced the horrific traumas and MK Ultra mind control. So that was had a significant effect, to think that someone can be sleep deprived all those years that much that they can't even dream. And then
Cathy, when you're sleep deprived, how does it go day after day? Could you take us through that a bit? Do you start to kind of like hallucinate, hear voices?
No, not necessarily that, because my whole experience was so structured that um, that my brain did what they told it to do, and it didn't just go off on its own like that. So but what it does is it makes you more compliant, because if you think about it, when you're really sleepy, you're not sharp, you're not firing, you're not, really alert and aware. So that was just shutting down conscious capacity and any kind of alertness, along with the starvation of my brain of the food and water. So all of this was just contributing to shutting down neuron pathways. When you combine it with torture and trauma, that makes for a very effective, powerful form of mind control.
I mean, this sounds so horrific. Does it get to a point when you've gone without sleep, food, fluid, that you just think, why should I even continue?
Couldn't think at all. I couldn't dread. I couldn't think to dread. I couldn't think to save myself. I couldn't think to do anything other than exactly what I was told to do. And by the time I was 30 years old, and intelligence insider Mark Phillips lifted my daughter and me out of that Washington, D.C. swamp, I didn't even know good people existed in the world anymore. I had lost all hope. But I do remember as a little bitty child, the last thing I remember really, thinking was, I wish there was some place in the world that people didn't hurt each other. So this was obviously contrary to my being. They couldn't make me one of them, no matter what they did to me. They couldn't affect my spirit. They couldn't change who I am. And what happens to us in life isn't who we are. Who we are is still within us, and it's divinely protected. So that they never could change that. And who I am today is who I always would have been had I been free to be that. Um, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So some people, Kathy, are asking, at this young age, when you're going through these things, sleep, food, fluid deprivation, were you separated from your parents? Were you, what was, were you able to go to school, or were you separated from school? Was there no like outsiders allowed around you? Stuff like that. People are asking.
Well, I was from Muskegon, Michigan, and it people can research. It was named the pedophile capital of the United States back, quite a few years ago. But it was even in the Muskegon Chronicle, they admitted it because the pervasiveness of MK Ultra mind control was very heavy in Michigan. The governor at the time was George Romney. He was a master of MK Ultra mind control of individuals and of the state and nation. I mean, he was just real able to bring that in. So Michigan became very much a prototype of this globalist agenda, including the global education. It was brought into the school system all along. So even my school was compliant. I had no place to turn. I couldn't turn to relatives, my family, law enforcement, politicians, my church, the schools. It was so pervasive in that area. The CIA had really targeted it hard, and so it was just more of the same. I didn't know um, there was anything other than that, and the kind of testing that they did in school was all about indoctrination, and also seeing how heightened suggestibility was, so they could target other children, my classmates and others, for the same kind of project.
So was it structured in a way in school where you weren't able to bond with other people?
There, it didn't really work that way. It's hard to explain where there's no normal human interaction. So one little boy that whose father was a principal of the school that I had been videotaped with, previously. We got into kindergarten and it was nap time and we rolled out our little mats and we thought that meant what we were conditioned to and didn't know that we weren't supposed to be doing that. So it was just such a massive part of my life that I didn't know that there was anything else. And the teachers were conditioned to understand that that's what was going on. And they were part of the CIA ops. And at worst, we were sent to the principal's office, and the principal was 100% compliant and behind it. So it was, it really felt like there was no place normal, and there were no normal relationships that I had, because I didn't know what that was even supposed to be.
So we've heard about, deprivation of sleep, food, fluids, and we've also, researching this, we've heard about experiments with chemicals on people, drugs, substances, electroshock. Were you subject to any of those categories?
The kind of drugs that I was subjected to were CIA designer drugs. They were very specific for MK Ultra mind control. Electroshock, absolutely. Stun guns primarily were used to transport me from one place to another, and was just a regular part of my victimization.
So how old are you when they started to do like stun guns on you and stuff?
I'm not really sure what would have been the first time on that. I do know that my primary MK Ultra mind control programmer, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, was very much a part of that aspect of things. He didn't actually adhere to the Temple of Set and the kind of horrific, evil abuses he inflicted on the U.S. military. He instead, adhered and worshipped his own power of the stun gun and capacity for being able to manipulate the minds of his victims.
So I'm going to put a photo up of Michael Aquino because I think this is very pertinent to your story. People can just see the evil resonating off this guy. Let me just get that on the screen. There he is. Could you just give a little bit about his background, please, Cathy?
I'm not sure about his background so much, other than that he was studying at the War College in the Psychological Warfare Division, and at the same time, the intelligence insider who lifted my daughter and me out, my hero, my love, Mark Phillips, was also working at the War College studying how to preserve the sanctity of free thought. So they were really arch enemies right from the get-go, just naturally. And very fortunately, Mark was ranked way over Aquino. So, it was it was evident of the reality that truth prevails, love always wins, and how ridiculous this mind manipulation is when we realize that we have all the power and they only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. So that is about all I know on his history of that. Aside from that, he was at various DARPA, NASA, military installations all across the nation, wherever he needed to be. He was at Bohemian Grove. He was in and out of the White House. He was he had a lot of fluidity because of his high-ranking position within the MK Ultra mind control community.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit to that from what I've found here on Wiki, because if people think we're just pulling this out of the clear blue, no, we're absolutely not. It starts out saying that Michael Aquino was an American political scientist, military officer, and Satanist, founder and high priest of the Temple of Set, specialist in psychological warfare for military intelligence, and an officer in the US Army. In 1918, in response to the Vietnam War, he published a paper co-authored with Colonel Paul Valley called From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory. In this paper, both authors propose a new type of psychological warfare to replace or supplement conventional warfare. Mind war suggests a broader, more pervasive form of psych war that extends beyond traditional PSYOP. It involves the use of media, information technology, and other forms of communication to influence both enemy forces and civilian populations. Measures such as altering electromagnetic waves, ionizing the air, are also proposed to influence or manipulate civilians. In 1969, he joined the Church of Satan, led by Anton LaVey, and quickly rose through the ranks. By 71, he had been appointed Magister Caverns of the fourth degree within the church hierarchy and was the editor of the publication The Cloven Hoof, and sat on the governing council of the Nine. Conflicts arose between him and LaVey, and he started selling. He left the Church of Satan. He started a ritual in which he asked Satan for advice on what to do next. According to him, Satan appeared to him in the summer of 75 and revealed to him that he wanted to be called Set, a name that his worshippers in ancient Egypt are said to have used. And on and on and on and on it goes. And there's also allegations of CSA against him as well in connection with the Army's Child Development Center at the Presidio of San Francisco. A girl came forward in August 1987, identified Aquino as the culprit. At least 58 of 100 children who attended the daycare center showed physical and mental signs of SA, leading to a lawsuit by the parents for $60 million in damages. So this is well documented. Everything Cathy is saying that this guy was involved in. Do you remember the first time you interacted with Aquino, Cathy?
It was on the military base for programming purposes, and after I had been conditioned by my handler at the time, Wayne Cox. Wayne Cox was my very first handler. He was a CIA assassin. He worked the Clinton MENA operations and was also friends with Roger Clinton, who was heavily involved in the most evil of activities. So I went from that extreme trauma base in the swamp of Louisiana to the swamp of Washington, D.C., where I began being exposed to Aquino after that point. And it was not very common.
I've written a book called American Made about the main activities of the Clintons. And
wow.
That was one of the, it was researching that, the boys on the tracks, etc.
Yes.
But just really opened my eyes to how evil the Clintons are. And the CIA chose Arkansas because he was the most corrupt of all of the governors to do the drug drops. And Roger even got arrested buying the white powder, and was recorded saying some of it was for Bill. He's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner.
They just got him out of the way. Those Clinton Chronicles had come out and exposed the railroad track incident. Wayne Cox was very much involved. That was 100% his MO. And like I said, he was deeply associated with Roger Clinton. So the things they were actually involved in were so much more than that. What he was arrested for was a diversion to act like, Clintons were cleaning it up. I mean, come on. It's so ridiculous. I really felt for him. It was like, come on, Roger, I wish you'd open your mouth and say what you really know. But I don't think the media would have covered it if he had.
Yeah,
well, they probably would cover it.
I realized how diabolical they all were from researching that book. And I've been going down that rabbit hole ever since. Okay, so how how many years was this mind control going on for in your life?
My whole life, right up until age 30. So, from at age 30, I was going to be eliminated at Bohemian Grove, for all the secrets that I had been exposed to. And, and just to make sure that those secrets didn't come to light, I was going to be killed in front of the global leaders whose secrets I kept. So that was the plan. And Mark Phillips was working the highest levels of intelligence, like I said, and had found pertinent information on our mind brain function buried under national security. He was very disturbed to see that people like Michael Aquino could be targeting innocent citizens like myself and my daughter and using us on the White House Pentagon levels. He was disgusted to see how blackmail operations were being used to compromise people in positions of power and influence, like the judges and politicians. And he was especially disgusted to see little children being taken in and out of the White House. And he was bound by laws of sedition from revealing what he knew, but he decided to take action instead. And that's when he lifted my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. MK Ultra mind control swamp and handed me keys to my own mind. And those keys are within us all, because we all have our ability to heal. We have the most resilient body, mind, and spirit. We have such capacity to overcome anything life puts in our way when we remember, that we've been blessed with this resiliency of body, mind, and spirit all along. So ultimately, Mark did not deprogram me per se. He just reminded me that it was within me to heal. And I began that healing process once I could trust Mark. And I had no capacity to trust because I didn't know, like I said, good people even existed in the world anymore. But just like my brain knew that my father's rape was wrong and shut down the neuron pathways, my brain also knew I was safe and that my daughter was safe for the first time. And so those neuron pathways were starting to open. And at that point, Mark told me to pick up a pen and paper and write out my trauma. The very act of moving a pen activates the logic, critical analysis part of the brain, where the information is transferred from the emotionally incomprehensible over to logic, where it's consciously seen, and all of a sudden you've got healing happening psychiatrically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, everything all at once. That's just one of the little brain tricks that he taught me, and it was it saved my mind and my life.
And that's good to hear, and I'm glad you got to that place. I'd just like to go back a bit though, because I think we've jumped. As you went from a child, then we're going to get to you having a daughter as well. As you're going from a child then to a teenager, I mean, and you're in this program, how is that affecting you? Because I think on the Roseanne interview, you mentioned you were so young, you didn't understand what they were doing to you. But as you're becoming a teenager, entering puberty, etc., is there a realization of, the horror of what they're doing? Does it become more visceral?
There's still no capacity to think, to recognize it, or to understand it, dread it, analyze it, process it. When we lose our free thought, we don't have any ability to critically analyze, question, or reason through anything. So no, it was just information in, and the programming was extensive at that time. By the time I was in high school, I was taken to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I was hunted in the most dangerous game of human hunting by Dick Cheney and others who were part of the cabinet that Gerald Ford had. And I encourage everybody, just look into that cabinet. You're going to see the same old perpetrators, the same ones we hear about today. Even Ford was part of the depopulation agenda with Henry Kissinger back then. So, this was all part of my peripheral life. It was what I saw and experienced, but was not able to process or comprehend. It's like there's being in the White House. There's no, wow, I'm in the White House. I mean, it's none of that. It's just not that way. It's just more abuse. It's just more of the trauma and the torture and the mind control, conditioning, and above all, carrying out whatever it is I'm there for and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, you've touched on a few important points there. Cheney and Kissinger, from my research, I would say, are some of the most evil people ever to have existed, and millions of people, I'm going to allege, have died at their hands. And it makes sense what you're saying. You were in the program for so long. It's hard to approach this from a rational perspective of becoming a teenager. You've been indoctrinated, so you've just become a complete and utter mind slave, which is what the program was designed to create. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I was kept exhausted and used all the time. So I didn't have any normal, what would be considered normal teenage experiences, or any even reflections or wondering about life, what I'm gonna, I didn't wonder about anything. I just did exactly what I was programmed to do.
So, Cathy, what were the circumstances of you having a child while you were in the program?
When I was transferred, I had met U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd, who became my owner in MK Ultra when I was 13 years old. I met him at the Mackinac Island, Epstein Island of its time, space, and that's where he took control of my life. As my owner, he directed my activities, where I would be sent, who I'd be prostituted to, what operations I'd be used in, and everything else. So he was very much a part of my victimization at that point, and he appointed Wayne Cox to become my first handler, because he wanted me to have more of the ritualistic trauma, the blood traumas, the horrific abuses there. So I was sent to the swamps of Louisiana, where that occurred. And again, Cox was high ranking in, other capacities. And in addition to the, absolutely horrific blood traumas that I was exposed to. So I was impregnated several times while in the course of all that trauma, in order to be used as a breeder. And so that was absolutely horrific. And then finally, my one daughter, Kelly, survived and was born directly into MK Ultra mind control, and I couldn't prevent her abuse anymore than I could prevent my own. I couldn't think to do that, but it doesn't mean that the essence of who I am inside didn't recognize. I had my maternal instinct. I had so much love. I had so much natural desire to protect her, and couldn't. So instead of being a part of any of her abuse, any abuse she endured was the most horrible trauma that I ever experienced. It was worse than any physical torture. It was worse than absolutely anything. Was that in later years? I've she My daughter Kelly had said that she had been told that if she took the abuse, I would be spared. Of course, I was being told the same thing. If I took the abuse, she would be spared. So, we were used in that way. Neither one of us effectively protected the other whatsoever, or ourselves. It was just all a manipulation of love, and that is how low these perpetrators will stoop to manipulate the mind of their victim.
So, Cathy, I've got a 1-year-old baby here, and it just makes you really
Oh,
uncomfortable. It makes you really uncomfortable hearing what you went through. It's very upsetting, and people in the chat are saying they're feeling nauseous. When you were pregnant, were you treated differently, or did the abuses continue?
oh, it's horrible. Worse. No,
Worse.
it's just horrible. Absolutely horrible. Because they had an agenda with all of it all along, and it violated every deep instinct that could possibly be. And again, what happens to us in life isn't who we are, because um, as quickly as I could regain any conscious thought, um, my first thought was to protect my daughter, be able to help her in her situation, and everything, because she'd been medically kidnapped into the so-called Child Protective Services, which was really no more than a catch net operation for MK Ultra children who had been sexualized and used in that capacity. So I saw that being set up by Senator Byrd. It was part of um, his funding and what he accomplished during his over 50 years in office. He had set that up. So I saw it being set up, and then it was being used against my daughter. So all that I experienced on that level only just motivated me that much more to be able to help my daughter, and to use the power of love for speaking out. So it wasn't bitterness against my abusers. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't anything like that. That's low vibration. That's their vibration. They got enough of that from me the first 30 years of my life. I'm not going to get any more. So it was love for my daughter that compelled me to speak out. And it's love that keeps me speaking out today. It's love for her, love for humanity, love for the children, and the full realization that love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it's the highest vibration. It's beyond their scope. So, when we all remember who we are and why we're here and reclaim that, it's our victory. It's our saving grace.
Well said. So, how long was it after you had your child that you were given the mental tools to get out of the program?
It was, we were transferred immediately after she was born into the country music industry by Senator Byrd's design, to our next handler, to ventriloquist stage hypnotist Alex Houston, who was working the country music industry. The country music industry was very much complicit in CIA drug operations and human trafficking operations, and were tied in with the MENA operations and everything else. So that was where I was being used for work then. And who looks twice at a mother with a child, and of course she was being used and assaulted throughout. So it wasn't until Mark Phillips lifted us out of that horrible victimization in 1988. I was 30 and my daughter was 8 years old when he lifted us out. And so that gave her just about a year of freedom, and what she attributes to her ability to survive. She's the most amazing. She's just amazing. She's brilliant. She's loving. She's so wise. But she got a compound felony. She was born into MK Ultra, then thrust into the corrupted system, because a year later, they medically kidnapped her into the system, and where she was abused further, but she was able to at least survive and navigate through that because of the critical analysis, free thought that she had gained. She says it's the most powerful thing that we could possibly give our children is the ability to think for themselves. This indoctrination going on in the school system has got to stop. Putting writing by hand back in the school system will stop the indoctrination and teach them how to think again instead of what to think. And with that, they'll have the strength to be able to help navigate them through this sexualization assault and the mind manipulation assault that they are enduring too.
Cathy, how did you decompress from all of those years of trauma when you came out?
Well, I began writing out the memory Mark taught me to do. And as I wrote it out, it was validated by clean members of intelligence and law enforcement. There are many people in these positions of power and influence who are very disturbed over what was going on with the erosion of free thought and the erosion of justice and the sexualization of children. So they validated the information, and it eventually was turned into my 1995 testimony for Congress. Of course, it was censored under national security, and that Bill Clinton was president at the time. He certainly wasn't going to let me talk about what I knew, the details that I knew. So national security was invoked on it, and that meant I would never see conventional justice. And that also meant that they couldn't do anything either. They couldn't take me to court either and try to shut me up because none of it could be revealed. So it allowed for me to continue speaking out with the full realization that the ultimate justice is positive change through public awareness. It's not going to be a judge banging a gavel and saying, you're right, well, it's already validated. We already know that. What we need is people to wake up and realize why our children are being targeted, why our humanity is being targeted, because they're trying to keep us at a low vibration where they are. And this low vibration, it allows for only flat thinking. We lose our wisdom. If we lose that, we have this flat thinking like artificial intelligence. And again, when we have that strength of spirit and that soul expression, we have wisdom, and it outthinks their criminal minds and artificial intelligence every time. It's our saving grace. It's why our humanity is under attack, why our children are targeted, and why we need to wake up and start, taking action to stop this assault on our humanity and our children.
So you said that writing was cathartic for you. What about the PTSD symptoms, the flashbacks, the nightmares, the cold sweats? Did you go through a period of those?
Absolutely went through. Healing is a process. It's not an event. And it took a long time to get through it. As I began remembering, I went through a real harsh time. I told Mark, I can't live with myself after what I did under mind control. And he said, you're not responsible for what you're tortured to do under mind control. Your abusers are. They need to be held accountable for their actions. But now that you are awake and aware, you are responsible for all your actions going forward. And I thought that was just like, whoa, okay. So from this point forward, I can make sure that everything I do is out of love, that it's in harmony with my life's purpose, that it's aligned with the divine within, where I can effectively make a positive difference in light of truth. So that was very healing for me. And it's something I think that everybody everywhere is needing to embrace these days, since mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population. And so many people complied with the mask up, the repetitive narrative programs, mask up, get the injection, social distance, over and over and over. And they did it, and they're seeing the results of that now. And many people have traumatic grief. They have traumatic guilt, and they need to realize that they are not responsible for what they did under mind control. They are responsible for all their actions going forward now. So we need to wise up and make wise choices, but we also need to see our abusers held accountable for those actions. We need to see some justice in this world.
Would you say that epiphany you described saved your life and put you on a new life trajectory?
It made all the difference in the world for me. But also, I loved Mark because I mean he was everything. We were safe, and he was handsome. He was so smart, and he was everything. He was a hero. He was a hero not only to me but to humanity by releasing this, getting this pertinent information on our birthright information out there. Such an amazing human being. Of course, I loved him, but he wouldn't have anything to do with me. He said, "You have to know who you are in order to have something to give in a relationship. You have to heal first." So that was motivation to heal really fast. And it was love is the greatest healer. And it was definitely a good reason for me to find out, okay, who am I? I couldn't get that from outside input because I already had that the first 30 years of my life. I couldn't love myself like people said to do because daily affirmations just weren't going to make that happen. So I went very deep within myself to the base core energy of my being, the vibration, the energy, the very essence of who I am. And that energy is love. So then I realized, oh, instead of love myself, I'll just live the love I am. And then by living that love, that was so much easier than daily affirmations. And with that came the strength of spirit. It came my realization of purpose. It allowed me to be who I was always meant to be. Because again, what happens to us isn't who we are still within. And I tapped into that. And it was like, in tapping into that, there's a realization that childhood cannot be stolen, that innocence can't be stolen from us. We all need to go in and reattach to that innocence, to align with the divine within, to be able to have that spirit connection, to be able to know who we are and why we're here. And that is the reason that I live so much joy today. I live in constant celebration and gratitude for my freedom. I live in constant gratitude and celebration of my ability to align with that divine, to be able to live life's purpose in light of love, to see people waking up, to see finally, after waiting a lifetime, to see them, taking action and stopping this sexualization of children. And it all began with being able to trust Mark enough to pick up that pen and paper and start writing, because that opened the neuron pathways in my brain by shifting that information over. And then he also told me, voice no negatives without a solution. So I didn't get to complain all the time. I had to think in new ways, and to think of a solution based with my knowledge base took a lot of effort. It's like pushing a river, but it's something we all need to do, because we all need to think beyond what we think we know, because we've all been conditioned for generations, and we need to think further. So we need to get our brain firing even more, so I encourage everybody, pick up that pen and paper, write out your fear, write out your trauma, write out what's holding you back, and then add a solution. Because when you add that solution, it forces the brain out of that dark pit. It forces it into new areas where you can see a clear path forward. And it actually helped me learn to think for myself. And on that one simple thing, to voice no negatives without a solution. Not only did it keep Mark from having to listen to me complain all the time and, moan and, instead, it gave me the ability to start thinking, and it took a while to get that firing. But I'm so grateful that I was motivated with love.
So, Cathy, you've described your inner journey brilliantly, but I imagine it must have took a degree of bravery to go that deep inside yourself. And I imagine a lot of people are afraid of what they may find down there, and perhaps that prohibits them from doing it. Did you have to face your demons at some point on that journey?
It wasn't about demons, because the essence of who I am is who I've always been. If I had been anything like what I was forced to do, then mind control wouldn't have been necessary. So it was always contrary to my being, and who I am is true to soul. So it's so easy to live truth. It's so easy to live true to soul. Because you just it's just pure. It's natural. And you don't have to worry about, lies and illusions and contrived attitudes and ego and nonsense. You don't have to have any of that stuff. You just get to live purpose. So there was no real confronting of demons per se. It was a matter of having to deal with the reality of the vile, dark, negative energy force that we share this planet with, to realize that these perpetrators are so low vibration and want us there, that their greatest fear is the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. And remembering that and knowing that on the highest levels of senses and intuitions and everything else that I had was also a huge part of the saving grace, because I realized I wasn't going to live in fear. I wasn't going to live in hatred and bitterness. I was going to live in light of love, because that's a high vibration, and they can't feed off of that, So I just stayed in that frequency, and realized that when everyone else reclaims their birthright to live their purpose and live their love, we win. Game over. And it's happening fast as this great awakening continues to accelerate, because it all begins with free thought.
So, Cathy, as horrific as it was, what you went through, would you say that it contributed to you having strength of mind, and perhaps even gave you a deeper understanding of humanity?
It has given me a deep understanding, and it's my daughter too. And it's amazing the conversations that we have, because we look at what goes on in the world through the filter of what we experienced and know is the agenda and everything else. So it gives us a deeper understanding, and also a stronger vision into this amazing evolutionary time we're living, as people do wake up and realize that we got to stop following these leaders we didn't elect, and start paying attention to what life is really about, and start living life as it was intended to be lived.
All right. So you started to write then, and you were healing. And then did you say that you spoke to Congress?
That was my testimony for Congress. It was censored under national security from Congress. So it was put in book form. And then it was taken into Congress by concerned members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, distributed it to every single member. And also throughout the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and all the different agencies, and made sure everybody had a copy. It was essential for survival at that point too, because if the information is already out, there's no point in killing us and shutting us up. All they would do is validate the information by doing that at that point. So it was a orchestrated effort by a lot of good people to make sure that that information that they did receive that information. So I think it was way far more reaching than one-time testifying could ever possibly be, because that testimony still reverberates today. It's just as true today and applicable today as it was then.
Cathy, what year was that?
1995.
Good grief, you really were at the forefront of this. And how did it feel to get that far, to have all of those people listening to you at that point?
Well, ever since I began speaking out in 1990 to help my daughter's situation, I had healed sufficiently from within myself where I couldn't be triggered. That's why my testimony has been the same for over 35 years, is because I can't be triggered. When we heal from within and open those neuron pathways, we can't be triggered anymore. So it was a form of justice seeing my abusers try to trigger me, and it failed. And I just laugh in their face, so, and then speaking to people, they didn't want to believe. Can you imagine talking about this information in 1990, before people even knew there was a swamp, or that our children were being sexualized, or that MK Ultra mind control even existed. And I realized then, it's like, well, these people can't even wrap their minds around this darkness because they're so pure. And so I woke up to the realization that good people exist in the world, and that they're really well intentioned and pure. They just needed to understand that we share this planet with dark negative energy force. So by the time 1995, Mark and I had survived so many, survived the impossible so much. It just absolutely amazing. All that's detailed in Access Denied for Reasons of National Security. It tells our journey through the corrupted system to help my daughter, and how we even survived to this point. So it's a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of love. And it was amazing to see people waking up all along the way. But as they would wake up in these increments, more national traumas would occur, like the Oklahoma City bombing, Waco, Ruby Ridge in the U.S., 9/11. That was a huge national and really kind of a global trauma. Mind control masked as a virus. That was a trauma unleashed on the global population. People were in fear while they were being programmed with repetitive narratives. So all of that was just a process of being able to see people waking up and hoping for the day that we would reach a point where we would have this evolutionary experience that we're finally moving into, with knowledge that is our defense against mind control, and with gathering that strength of spirit, to align with the divine within, and seeing more and more people do that every day is really exciting and encouraging. Seeing them taking action to actually protect the children and give them a safe place to be so they can begin their healing process. I'm very excited where we go from here, because we've already passed critical mass. We've already got the victory. We need to claim it. We need to continue to dismantle the mess, but we're in victory mode at this point, and I'm very excited about that.
Cathy, you touched on something important as well there. You mentioned, the dark forces after you'd come out. Were there threats on your life? Were they trying to get you back in the program? Was the manipulations going on?
Oh, absolutely. For one, they didn't know anybody could heal. They never counted on somebody like Mark Phillips that had the information on mind brain function to use it to restore mind instead of, control. So they couldn't think like, they don't think like we do any more than we can think like they do. So, they didn't expect that healing could happen. When they saw that it did, it was really funny to watch their paradigm shift, because they realized not only could people heal, but their secrets were going to be exposed.
Good. All right. So as you came into the late 90s and early 2000s, what was your life like around that point?
Well, it was speaking out globally and traveling on a global scale. It was beautiful seeing that this great awakening was happening, and that people were finally understanding what mind control was, and they were embracing the information. Mark and I spoke before crowds of thousands, and it was good to see that many people coming to embrace that information. Even giant groups of people from the World Bank and the United Nations were coming to hear us speak, because they wanted to know where to invest their money that wasn't going to be invested in the New World Order. So there are a lot of different reasons that people were ready for the information, whether it was law enforcement or mental health communities or whatever. People were ready to start seeing some positive progress in preserving the sanctity of our humanity, instead of seeing it eroded more and more, while a handful of puppet masters made all the money. And we did all the work.
And did you get to meet David Icke when you were doing those talks?
Oh, absolutely. I met him early on because when I was writing Trance and he was doing Robots Rebellion, we learned each other was doing that. And he was like, "You're like a manifestation of my book." And it was like, well, how did you even know to write that book if it didn't happen to you? You know, so it was an interesting convergence right from the get-go that was like a instant friendship recognition, you know, the way that, you know, convergence happens with people.
And did you find that people tried to suppress your story, like, you know, with YouTube banning our original interview? Did you find that there was any kind of suppression from the mainstream media or the various platforms?
Oh, absolutely. You know, that this I'm no stranger to censorship. I mean, national security invoked on my testimony, and you know, I've had um, so many assaults and attacks on my character, because if they can't, you know, assassinate one way, they're going to try to do it through character assassination in the media. Look at my Wikipedia; it says I'm a conspiracy theorist. How can I theorize a conspiracy that is my life's experience? You know, they don't make any sense. Besides that, why was national security invoked on a conspiracy theory? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So, you know, it's to me, all the attempts at suppression are laughable. And I always decided that there's always a way to say what needs to be said. And, you know, just keep pushing on through in spite of the censorship. But my gosh, Sean, imagine what would have happened if my testimony for Congress in 1995 had actually been released. I mean, it reveals all that we're experiencing today, and maybe we wouldn't have had to experience it. You know, so in that regard, it's been difficult to see how slow people are to wake up to the information, that it took this long. It took a lifetime, my whole life, for this to happen, but it's happening. So, you know, my timing isn't necessarily the timing of a bigger picture. And I guess it's all happening in divine timing. So I'm amazed that I'm even alive to see it happening, and I celebrate that miracle in itself. So,
Right, we've got over 2,000 watching live presently. We're going to open it up to viewer questions now. And if you have just joined us, and with Cathy O'Brien, and Cathy's links, website, X, Insta, books, etc., in the description box. And I'm going to put some of those links in the live chat as well. It's really important to support her important work. I mean, she was absolutely at the forefront. So many people are talking about MK Ultra these days, you know, from Candace Owens to our friend O'Neill, who wrote the book about the Manson family. But good grief, Cathy was exposing this decades before these people. So if you want to draw on her knowledge and experience, get your questions in now, please. And Tammy wants to know, do we know if this is still actively being done in the modern day, the MK Ultra mind control?
absolutely, it's being used in churches, in the entertainment industry. It's the pervasiveness of it has expanded. So mind control's a sliding scale from the kind of torturous robotic mind control that I experienced to information control. And we've all been experienced information control and had our knowledge base altered. And we all formulate our thoughts and opinions based on what we know. And that knowledge base has been altered. So that's all part of the MK Ultra formula. When we look at what's being done with our food and how it's being attacked, and the water being tainted, you know, we've got mass MK Ultra mind control agenda that has been going on for generations now, and it's time we wake up and stop complying with it. And it's up to each and every one of us to wake up ourselves. We can't wake up for others. So it's up to each and every one of us at whatever level it is that we need. The healing methods that Mark taught me to apply to us all at whatever level we need, even if it's just a matter of expanding our thinking beyond what we think we know. That PTSD Time to Heal is on my website. It's posted there. It's secured where everyone can have it right now while they need it most, and just start applying it. It's easy to self-apply because it reminds us of our birthright defenses.
So Kat is asking, why do you feel such skepticism exists even in well-meaning folks? Thank you. Your courage is inspiring. Let me just add something before I give this one to you, Cathy. So I read about you, I think it was in a David Icke book in about 2004. And when I read it, I had skepticism. My brain was full of skepticism. And I would say that skepticism came from my indoctrination, my education, the mainstream media, the school system. All of those things were all I'd ever known to get information from throughout my entire life, had created my worldview. And when I went on this journey of reading all these books and doing these deep dives, I felt all of that worldview just getting crushed and melted from me, and it was just getting revised day after day after day. It was getting revised. And I was kind of in a state of naive bliss, because once you do start to go down these rabbit holes, you realize how dark and evil the globalists are, and it does affect your psyche. Anyway, that's from my personal experience. I was skeptical when I came across Cathy's story in the beginning. I was skeptical of David Icke, but now look how true it has all been proven, and that's because of all of my conditioning from being a child and growing up watching the BBC, etc. But anyway, Cathy, what would you like to say on that question?
Yeah, because like in 1995, when my testimony was released, it seemed prophetic back then, and now time has proved it all. So it's a matter of opening your eyes to research and be able to think beyond what you think we know. People get very complacent in their thinking. They get very lazy brained, and we've been conditioned to extreme lazy brains with, headline news and quick texting, and this kind of shallow, narrow thinking we're being conditioned with. We need to wise up, think further, research, dare to understand that we share this planet with some dark negative energy forces. And I'm sure that is a big reason why people are slow to accept the information, because it's hard to wrap our brains around it. But they're not like us. They do not like us, but they're here. And we need to start dealing with that reality in order to claim our natural victory against them by shining the love light of who we are. It's all so simple. Their darkness can't penetrate our light once we realize that. So it's silly that people don't embrace the information in light of that, but at the same time, it's their life's journey and their process too, to be able to reach a point where they can gather their strength of spirit and face the harsh reality of it all, and realize that it's up to us to make the difference. And I think a lot of people are afraid of responsibility, when in fact responsibility is a freedom. When we have the ability to respond, that's a beautiful choice. We can live, love, and make a positive difference. So, we don't need to fear responsibility either, but it has just been, we've been conditioned to be lazy for so long that even just the very word makes us think we're going to have to do too much, but it's also simple. When we gather the strength of spirit and the infinite power of love, remember who we are and why we're here, and start living our purpose.
You've got a few people asking whether you've got any stories or recollections of Bohemian Grove or the White House.
What kind of story? What are they looking for?
Just from your experience, if you've got any memories to share.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they're detailed in Transformation of America, and there's a lot of experiences that I had at Bohemian Grove that were very perverse. I overheard conversations there. Was conditioned with um, with the AIDS epidemic that was being unleashed on the population through injections. And the conversations at Bohemian Grove about that were absolutely horrific. What went on in the White House was um, a lot. There's a lot of stories that aren't in my testimony that pertain more to the manipulation of President Reagan during his administration. He'd been traumatized through the assassination attempt and endured a horrific physical trauma and lost control of his administration at that point. And George Bush and Dick Cheney ran his administration and absolutely treated him like dirt, having been around the around Reagan during those times. I know how horribly he was treated, and there's a lot of different things that go on with the lead up to wars to manipulate the minds of the population to think we're doing it for some kind of a noble reason, some freedom, when in fact it's usually about drugs. The Afghanistan war, taking over the poppy industry, and these kind of conversations on the reality of what these events are really all about are what's discussed in places like the White House and Bohemian Grove. So there's no stories of being like in the White House, and it doesn't work that way. And the reality of it is not anything honorable, and it's something that when people see the reality of what goes on, um, it's completely different, and we got a long way to go to clean that mess up. And I can't even imagine the the swamp muck this administration that we've got in right now has to go through in order to try to clean this up at all. But ultimately, it's up to each and every one of us to break our illusions of what we think of places like that, and realize that the people who've been in control have been manipulating our perceptions and our minds for a long, long time.
Yeah, the Hinckley bullet stopped just short of
Yes.
Reagan's heart,
Yeah.
and Bush Senior was salivating over the prospect of Reagan dying and him taking over. And you're right, they treated Reagan terribly, and they had Reagan sign all over the power basically over
Yeah.
to Bush. Yeah, absolutely evil crime family. So
Yeah.
PJ is asking, who are the evil people in power now? They need to be exposed.
Follow the money. It's the puppet
Huh.
masters at the top. It's the ones behind the advertisements. It's the ones running big pharma, and just follow the money. You're going to get to these self-appointed, self-anointed global leaders who meet in secret and don't allow us to see their meetings. They fly their jets and chug their yachts to these secret get-togethers to decide how they're going to control our lives and tell us not to have cows. I mean, it's just ridiculous what's going on. But ultimately, follow the money. You'll find out who they are, and then if they die off, or someone else takes a place, it's about following the money. You're still going to get right to the puppet masters at the top.
Next question is from Nikki. How did Cathy retain her memory with so much programming?
I'm not real sure how that question is meant. Understanding our mind brain function, our brains record events surrounding trauma photographically. And so if someone endures like a hit and run, in their subconscious, they can actually see the license tag of the car. This kind of information is because our brains photographically record events surrounding trauma. So for all that trauma, all the conscious awareness neuron pathways being shut down, my subconscious mind was cram-packed with photographic memory of not only what I had experienced, but what was going on around those experiences, the conversations overheard. Even in early childhood, when a child can't comprehend what those conversations are, the brain still photographically records them, and it can all be written out later. And so that the neuron pathways in the brain open up around that compartmentalization, and then we have free access to our own mind from then on and can't be triggered anymore. So that allows for a lot of information to be packed in there. Additionally, when we lose our free thought, our brains get like we're like blasted into the primitive parts of our brain of heightened intuition, the defense mechanisms of heightened senses, telepathy, the vibrational frequencies, why there's so many studies done in MK Ultra on psychic capabilities and remote viewing and all like that, because these primitive defense mechanisms of our brain are also activated. And in writing out memory and remembering the trauma, I have full access to those parts of my brain too, even though I was blasted into them from the trauma. It's part of all of our brains we forgot to use. We just forget to use it, but it's within us all. We can access that, exercise it, and reclaim that for ourselves. So ultimately, we gain a full access to our brains, and our brains are just absolutely miraculous, amazing ability that we all should be utilizing to their fullest potential.
So Siga wants to know, have you had any supernatural experiences?
Well, there we just touched on that with the intuitions and all. I'm working on releasing another little healing book called Align with the Divine, and it's about going within, and when we align with the divine on that level, we have the ability to drive these primitive gifts that we were born with. So I have very heightened intuition and telepathic abilities, and ultimately it's just beautiful having that telepathic communication with my pets, because the interaction, the depth of interaction there, the heightened senses, recognizing who's a perpetrator, right, from a distance, being able to have those kind of senses and recognition, knowing who's abused, being able to recognize other survivors, knowing what might not be safe, and acting accordingly, making choices accordingly. The intuitions are there. We have a synchronistic flow of timing that is laid out for all of us that we all can attune to. And when we do, life unfolds in the most beautiful way, and goals are achieved above and beyond our wildest imaginations, because that's all part of what we receive when we align with the divine within. So yes, I have wonderful amazing abilities and capacities that I enjoy to the fullest.
So Evan wants to know, how corrupt is CPS?
I don't think it can be cleaned up. I think it's got to be dismantled completely. Ultimately, CPS is the Child Protective Services is so bad as a catch net operation that it's gone on for generations now, and it's been a huge part of the human trafficking network. I don't know how it can be cleaned up. I think people need to care for the children, make safe places for them over here, and be able to help them actually heal, because mental health was not taught the innate healing capabilities that we have within us, and they're taught instead to pump people full of big pharma drugs to keep them further from their memory, and and taught, to hypnotize, and that's the wrong approach, because the brain knows when it's being invaded, and that's invasive again. We have the ability to heal from within. We need a safe place to do that. And I don't think CPS can be that safe place. We need a safe place over here with a true, innate, natural, birthright healing capabilities. So, yeah, I think it's too corrupt.
Yeah, the dark forces have co-opted everything. So, next question: what is the end goal of MK Ultra? What do they want with people, and why are they using them?
The ultimate goal of MK Ultra is to remove us from our free will ability to have soul expression, because it's that soul expression that they fear. It's where we have wisdom, we have all this depth, we have so much that the intuitions, and we have so much more to draw from than just flat linear thinking that artificial intelligence is. That they've been following a DARPA artificial intelligence plan for generations. These criminals, these criminal perpetrators have been following that, and they align with it because criminal minds do. They're flat too. Wisdom outthinks criminal minds every time, and it outthinks artificial intelligence. So we need to preserve our humanity. Our humanity has been under attack. It's being eroded from numerous levels, and when we realize that their ultimate end game is to make us compliant, easily led, and linear thinking like they are, then we realize they can't have that victory because we already win when we realign with the divine, live the love we are, and have our soul expression, and use our wisdom to outthink their criminal minds. It's so easy to outthink them. Just don't comply.
Cassandra wants to know, how deeply involved was Ford in all of this?
100%, not only of me, but of many others, and of the whole nation. He was, we look back on the Kennedy assassination, and that's when these perpetrators, these globalists, took such a huge control over the United States, was with the Kennedy assassination. After Gerald Ford is the one who was part of covering up. He was the head of the Warren Commission. They gave us the one bullet theory, and that is how he was awarded being president without even being elected. So he was put in the office of president so that he could start and bringing about this globalist mind control agenda. And he had George Bush, head of the CIA, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld's the one who gave us aspartame, that artificial sweetener that started dumbing us down because it stops critical analysis. He had Nelson Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger, who he was doing the depopulation agenda with. He had Jack Valenti, head of the Motion Picture Association of America, as his press secretary. Jack Valenti decided what we would be seeing on TV, and was using the repetitive media narrative to such an extent that when I say Kennedy assassination, we all get the same visual of the bullet hitting the head, because that repetitive narrative was programmed into us while we were all being led. It was a horrible national trauma, and it was ultimately a global trauma. And it's also when the electronic voting machines were introduced in the wake of the Kennedy assassination. They were rigged since their inception to place these compliant puppet masters in key positions of power and influence. Gerald Ford was a part of every bit of that, and is one of the most vile, evil perpetrators of MK Ultra on individuals and nations that has ever been. And haven't been exposed to him since I was a little bitty toddler, and being sexually assaulted by him then, because he was so much behind the sexualization of children for a mind control agenda. I don't know how it gets much worse than that, until you consider the people that I named that are in his cabinet, that contributed to it. So he was absolutely horrible.
Jilly wants to know whether you can speak about Colonel Williams.
I'm not sure who Colonel Williams is.
All right. Next question is whether you ever met Hillary Clinton.
Yes. That's definitely in my testimony. I met her in the late 70s when I was working the MENA operations, and I met her later several times, and that's detailed in my testimony for Congress. It was absolutely horrific. She's beyond abusive and perverse. She's one of the most evil, vile, I don't even want to say the word people that I've ever encountered. Again, ones like her are not like us, and they do not like us. They don't even, I can't relate to what she is at all, other than one of the most vile people I've ever encountered in my whole experience.
Susie wants to know how you know Roseanne and whether you are both mind controlled by the same programs.
Well, we both know a lot about MK Ultra. Roseanne and I met when we were doing an expose on MK Ultra mind control, healing from it, and the child sex operations that were going on in Hollywood. So we were exposing that in 2008. That's when we first met, and it was like, like that David Icke thing, instant recognition, instant friends, instant, deep friendship, and with the full understanding of what each of us knew about MK Ultra mind control, and what we also knew about healing, what we knew was being done to the children. It was quite a significant bond that we share and continue to share to date. And I look forward to whatever other ways she and I are going to be able to collaborate and bring more information to light together.
Yeah, we'd love to get her on the channel as well to tell her story, if you could put in a good word. Amy wants to know what you think of Britney Spears' behavior, whether that is indicative of mind control, because she goes back to Disney as well, and you started out talking about Disney.
Absolutely. And the more you know, the more you see. And she's given every example of MK Ultra that there can be. She's done reached out many times only to be brought back in, like so many MK Ultra survivors. So ones like Michael Jackson, and what happened with him. Same MK Ultra mind control program. We need to start listening and recognizing what mind control looks like, the attempts to break free of it, and the way that handlers just pull them back in. They need to heal from within before they can actually speak out. Otherwise, they're just targeted for further abuse. I have a lot of compassion for her, and what she's clearly endured. Around age 30, many survivors of MK Ultra begin to remember a lot. Any childhood abuse that happens prior to age 5 usually starts to surface around age 30, when electrochemical changes happen in the brain. Those electrochemical changes open neuron pathways in the brain, and memory starts to leak out. And around age 30, we saw Britney Spears, just shave her head, just if there's no words to describe that someone is hurting and depersonalized, they'll go to extremes to show it. They'll shave their hair. They'll maybe get, tattoos all over their face and piercings, where there's all this metal, and they're just saying, I can't see myself. I can't feel anymore. I'm so depersonalized and removed from any awareness that this is what happens. So, when we see people doing behavior like that, we need to look further into MK Ultra mind control and realize that these are extreme pleas for help, and start having some compassion and understanding about what's going on.
Would you say the same is the case for Justin Bieber as well?
That definitely needs to be looked at. He's given the indications. There's so many who have tried to show us and tell us in different ways what happened to them, and it's very difficult to assert that kind of information when you don't have any conscious awareness.
So Seeger is asking, Cathy, did you ever meet Henry Kissinger? If so, could you describe his character traits? And was there anything good about him?
I don't know of anything good, and there's really not much that I can say about Kissinger, because my mother was the one who was familiar with Henry Kissinger, and that was her life's experience, and one that I wasn't privy to on a level where I can attest to it, other than that had happened. So it was times like that my mother was with Henry Kissinger while I was with Ford or being abused other places.
Get your final questions in now for Cathy, please, as we approach the hour. And a question from Uber. Cathy, do you have any interesting techniques you were taught to recondition your behavior?
I don't know that it worked quite that way. It was more a part of healing and the realization that that what happened to me isn't who I am. I didn't have to keep acting out programming. When you deprogram the program and you get rid of the mind control, then what's left is pure. So it wasn't necessarily any tricks or anything to do about reconditioning behavior. It was just a matter of living true to soul. It was easier than having to recondition anything.
Let me just do a quick poll. Viewers, put a 1 in the chat if you'd like to see Cathy come back and do a collaboration with Kevin Annette. Put a 2 in the chat if you would not be interested in that. I think I know the answer. All right, Nathan wants to know, do all Western politicians get compromised by this program?
Not all. Not all. There's MK Ultra is used on those who and technologically and otherwise, those who are not complying properly, like to the degree like what Ronald Reagan experienced, or a Manchurian candidate like George Bush Jr. or something like that. So MK Ultra is definitely used, but so is blackmail, coercion, threats to families' lives. There's other ways that they control and manipulate people. And I don't know of anyone in positions of power and influence who haven't endured some form of assault by these perpetrators. But again, knowledge is our defense against mind control. Anyone who has the knowledge that's our defense cannot be mind controlled. And so that's an evolutionary step for all of us to reclaim that birthright to having that defense against the knowledge that's our defense against mind control, so that we can't be manipulated. And in the meantime, realizing that government leaders have been manipulated for a long time. There are many still in positions of power that are being manipulated, and all the more reason why we need to stop following these leaders that we didn't elect and start going within and governing ourselves. This is our time to take our personal responsibility and live free regardless of the politics around us.
So B has asked 2 questions. You've answered the first, so I'll just ask the second. Are there currently MK Ultra operatives working in a similar capacity as you were?
Absolutely. Yes. There's so many levels of MK Ultra, and I'm sure that they're still being used on high levels on a global scale today. We're seeing, I think there's a lot of scrutiny looking at government leaders and their so-called wives. Um, but the presidential model level has been used for generations and generations and will continue until we all wake up and refuse to tolerate it any longer.
So Jane wants to know, is this spiritual warfare or something else?
Ultimately, it is spiritual warfare because without free thought, we don't have the free will ability to access our strength of spirit. It removes us from that. It removes us from our humanity, and it's our humanity that's under assault. So, whatever semantics we want to apply to it, ultimately, mind control is a spiritual warfare, and mind control is the tool being used by this dark, negative energy force globalist agenda.
Is Kelly out of the mental health system now, please?
Absolutely, she is. She's totally free of that. She and I are very close, and she's amazing. Uh, she was able to get through that system um, because of that one little spark of being able to think free. There were so many brilliant things she did that are even in access denied for reasons of national security, like when she was counseled that her past wasn't real. And she said, your beliefs don't change reality. And when she was being indoctrinated in their school system, she said that programmed information is not applicable knowledge. And she just had an ability to stand up for herself throughout that horrible experience. And she is 100% free now. And she's amazing. She's not vocal the way that I am. She chooses to just be in nature and with animals um, and stand behind me saying, "Go, mom." You know? So yeah, she's amazing. She's free.
A few people are asking, what can we do to protect humanity from this today?
Raise awareness. Awareness is the first step towards that positive, necessary change. And you refer people to PTSD Time to Heal. Everybody everywhere can apply it and evolve with the knowledge that's our defense against mind control going forward, so we can never be manipulated again.
Did you ever spend time at the Vatican or with Jesuits under MK Ultra?
The Jesuits were very much involved in my MK Ultra victimization. Is a very strong part of it. Their alliance with the CIA was called the Order of the Rose, and it was one of the most powerful convergence of global leaders for implementing the slave society agenda that has ever been, because the Catholics had long since learned the effects of trauma on the human mind through the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades and the burning of the witches. There were so many orphan children as a result of the violence that was inflicted. So these traumatized children, the Catholic orphanages were born, and they found the children were easy to manipulate because of their trauma, and that they were highly suggestible. So they were being conditioned into who would be the next pedophile priest, or who would be the next sexual abuser of children that was allowed in the churches. And so it perpetuated itself that way. Because they had been doing that for so many generations already, the CIA was very much interested in taking their form of mind control and rolling it in with the harmonic frequency, the electronic aspects of it, and creating a more powerful form of MK Ultra mind control. And it was also my experience that the Vatican is where the videos, the blackmail videos, were being stored. It was one of the places it was being stored. And my uncle was very much responsible for helping transport some of those there. So My inside knowledge of it is extreme, and my inside knowledge also includes, you know, people like Archbishop Vigano, who's doing everything he can to expose the mess from the inside, and all the brave people on the inside trying to clean the mess up. There's a lot of good people involved. So it's not to paint it all with a dark brush and say, oh, they're all evil. But man, the roots sure are. It's got a, I don't know, you know, it's kind of like trying to clean up CPS. Can it be done?
Steve wants to know, did you ever find out who was the head of this evil enterprise?
The handful of globalist puppet masters that are at the top of this today. It's a dark agenda that is a slave society agenda, and ultimately it follows a DARPA generated artificial intelligence program.
So, Cathy, you've been with us for 2 hours. Really generous with your time. I can't thank you enough. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
Yes, it's within us all to heal. And, you know, we can go ahead and wrap our minds around the reality of what's been done with our children, because it's up to us to be able to protect them, to give them a safe place to be, so that they can begin healing too. When we understand that we've already got the victory with the strength of the human spirit, that it's the bright light that darkness can't penetrate, that light can only expose their dark secrets, and it can dissipate their darkness when we all shine bright enough. So, you know, this is our time. What an amazing time to be alive. It's our time to shine and live the love we are.
Wow, you're such a powerful speaker, and we can't thank you enough for sharing this with us. You know, it must be hard to relive some of these memories, but we salute your bravery, and we're all going to share this and raise awareness and continue to do exactly what you said to stop these bastards from, you know, implementing these programs. So I'm going to let you go, Cathy, and get on with your day, and I'll close the show. But again, much love and respect from the UK, and you take care, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Cathy. Thank you. Wow, I'm absolutely mind blown by Cathy's testimony. What a phenomenal guest. I know there was still a lot of outstanding questions. We had almost 2,500 watching at the peak across all platforms. Some questions pertain to 9/11, some questions pertain to the Adreno Kool-Aid. Look, folks, I know where to draw the line. Our first video with Cathy got banned completely. And for me to be able to bring these guests on, there are still some areas that we cannot go to on YouTube. Otherwise, poof, the video is going to be gone the next day. 9/11 is one of them. And the Adreno Kool-Aid is another. I personally know people who this year or last year have lost their entire channels or got major strikes. So we've got to do everything carefully. We're still on a minefield. There's still mines buried. I like to think I know where all the mines are. But I'm doing my best under the circumstances, folks. So yeah, if there's any other guests of this caliber you would like to suggest to us, email them in. You know, SeanAtwood.com is my website. It's got my email address on it, and we will try and get them on to keep this going and to keep to raise awareness and to keep the mission that Cathy stands for going. The main thing was raising awareness. So please share, help us with the algorithm with this video. Please share it. We're almost up to 1 million subs right now. If you've not subbed, if you're watching, please sub. You know, once we hit that million, you know, we'll be able to get the big guests on. We can attract them with that. But thank you for tuning in on this Saturday night, wherever you are. Much love in the world, and take. Oh, I think I hear Baby Ziggy coming my way. Is Baby Ziggy coming? I was just about to say, take care of the little ones. And here he is. Here's Baby Ziggy. Come on, love. Woo! You want to wave? You want to? Oh, look, who's that, Ziggy? Is that you on the screen? Is that you on the screen? Is that you? Should we wave goodbye, Ziggy? Wave goodbye to the viewers. Wave goodbye. Bye-bye. 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 Oh, he's grabbing the microphone. He's grabbing the microphone. All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, everyone. He is big now. He's not even 2 yet. He's already in year 4 clothes. What's the good